Yeah, our next presenter is actually a Wall Street dropout turned serial entrepreneur from the Boston area. Although his first startup in information technology is based here in New York. And since he handed over the reins of his first company, he's been working hard to find creative ways to use technology to continue to serve New York City. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Sit. Show you what New York is all about. I just came from a ribbon cutting with Jacques D'Amboise, who's a dancer and has this national dance studio up on 147th Street. And I go from here to give an award to Christo. Christo and Jean-Claude were the ones with the banners in Central Park. They're trying to wrap a river in Colorado. They've wrapped the Reichstag. They've done a bunch of things. But in the middle, I'm here with you. You know, I don't know how many of you can dance and how many of you are artists, but all kidding aside, you do something else. You guys change the world. You are innovators and entrepreneurs, or as I call you, my peeps. This really is, to some extent, hello up there. This really is a homecoming. 30 years ago, I could have been sitting out there with a lot of ideas and a lot of passion, a lot of inspiration, but no business. And of course, my case, I didn't have much choice. You are doing this because you want to. I did mine because I was fired from my previous job, which I was fired by a 7-man executive committee. The ringleader unfortunately died, but one of my employees owns his house. And the other 6 all became paying customers of Bloomberg. Some very smart person once said, living well is the best revenge. Anyways, I don't think there's a room right now, any place in the city, that has as much talent and creativity as this one does. And I would bet for as hard as you're working, as little as you're sleeping, as worried as you may be about paying the bills, you're doing what you love and having the time of your life. And I can remember when I started my company, it really took us 3 years from when we started till when we had our first customer. When we got our first customer, I remember literally on the back of an envelope multiplying the monthly fee times 12, because it turned out there were 12 months in a year, who knew, and times 20, because we had sold 20 terminals. And then I calculated what my weekly expense was for labor and rent and everything else, and we were at break even. But for the first 3 years, I went from, the first year was easy. First year is always easy because you have all the enthusiasm in the world. You don't have to worry about anything. You just know in your heart it's right. And the last year is also easy because you, by that time, know that the light at the end of the tunnel isn't a train coming towards you. It was that middle year that I remember took a little gagging when I would have to put some more money into the company every 2 weeks to meet the payroll. But I had an idea, and others had the same idea with me, and together we built a business. When I first started, this will show you our age difference, nobody had invented the PC. And every Saturday, I went to a barn up in Connecticut with the engineer who had designed our terminal, and I soldered resistors and capacitors into the circuit boards, because I was pretty good at soldering, and we made our own terminals. Now, when a PC came along, I said, we can't compete with this. We shouldn't be in the hardware business, and we right away converted our system to the PC. We also started our company before the internet. Now, I know all of you think there was never a before the internet. But let me tell you, there was. What we did is we would rent a phone line, 9600 baud, which was a very fast line. From here to Chicago, for example, I went out and I found somebody who would rent us a closet in Chicago. And in that closet, we had a mux that would have 3 or 4 4800 baud lines going out to the individual customers. And when there was a problem, they had to wait until I had time to get on an airplane and go out and fix it, because I was not only the installation guy, I was the repairman. But somehow or other it worked, and we converted from our own network to the internet, just in the way we had converted from our own terminals to PCs. But we never lost sight of what we really were doing, and that's one piece of advice I can give you. There was a guy named Ted Levitt at the Harvard Business School back in the 60s who wrote a paper on knowing what business you're in. And he, for example, pointed out that the people that own the railroads thought they were in the railroad business. They didn't understand they were in the transportation business. So they got stuck with railroads while along came an interstate highway system with trucks, along came airplanes and that sort of thing. What I'm trying to say is understand what you're trying to do, not what it's called, not the technology that you're using, the hardware or anything else. What do you do for people? And it may very well be that there's different ways to do it, and you can't be married to the old thing. What you want to stay married to is the idea of the service that you really provide. We made a system that provided financial information. It fundamentally does the same thing. There's an awful lot more information. There's different ways to get it. There's different ways to sort it and display it. And now we're going into ancillary businesses like providing information for lawyers. But if you think about it, it's all the same thing. Our expertise is getting information, scrubbing it, categorizing it correctly, storing it, and making it available whenever and wherever you need it in the ways that our customers use it. And that was something that Jobs said, although I will say that I think I said it back in 1996. Don't ask me what's happening there. I'm just leaning on the computer. Well, it's just to keep you guys interested. I remember what Jobs said and what I said back then was, you want to listen to your customers, but not too much. It's the old adage, always listen to your customers, but if you think about it, that's not really good advice, because your customers aren't good at describing what they do. They're good at doing it. And they're very different skills. And I remember when I worked at Solomon Brothers, and I got pushed out of running the equity business and went to run the back office and all their computer systems. And people said everybody took the information and they moved it to their left side. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I had somebody up in the balcony looking down at the trading room, and every time they got a piece of information, paper, whatever it was, did they move it to the left or the right? And 50-50 went in both directions. The people that had described what people were doing weren't good at that. And so my advice to you is ask people what they're doing, look at them, but don't let them design your product. That's not what they're good at. And in our case, and in Steve Jobs' case, I think that's exactly what happened. Steve went and tried to look at what do people really want, and he didn't get tied up with what was the hardware or what conventional wisdom was or how things had been done elsewhere. He took an idea and he kept coming up with another one and another one and another one. Not all of his things work, incidentally. We write the history of Steve Jobs, and everybody thinks that everything he touched turned to gold. It did not. But what he never let happen was getting disappointed when it did not work. Now, I'm not here to pitch you on buying a Bloomberg terminal, but if you have $20,000 a month and you want to give it to me, that's fine. I'm not even allowed to have a lot of say in the company other than with major decisions because of my other day job for which I get $1 a year. But what I want to pitch you on is New York City, something that is near and dear to my heart. You have the power to make New York City the global capital of innovation and entrepreneurship. In many ways, we already are. We are the world's capital for media, advertising, fashion, finance, so many other industries. We have double the number of fashion houses of Paris. This is where it takes place. We're the college town of America. Somebody said, oh, no, the college town is Boston. And I love Boston. I grew up there. But it turns out we have more undergraduate and graduate students in our universities here than Boston has people. And we're becoming a tech capital. This is the area that is going to define this city in the 21st century's economy. And I want us to grow faster and bigger, so when people talk about tech startups, they talk about Silicon Valley and New York City before anywhere else, and our administration is looking every possible way to support entrepreneurs and innovation. And I just wanted to mention a few, because we certainly can't sit here and let Silicon Valley be bigger than us in anything. I mean, there's nice weather, but here's where it's happening. And all kidding aside, I don't mean to knock any place else, but if you think about it, New York City is the intellectual capital of the world. It is the intellectual capital whether you're a fashion designer or a tech person or a writer or anything in finance and in biosciences. This is where the best and the brightest are. This is the big pond, and if you can make it here, you can obviously make it any place. We've tried to do some things to help build our tech business. We have a bunch of initiatives to do so. One is incubators. We have partnered with universities and nonprofits to create incubators that provide discounted office space for startups. Some of those startups have already grown and become major employers in our city. What we're trying to do is to help you if you're starting a small business. There's a guy who has a hamburger stand in Brooklyn called Smash Burger. Hamburgers were pretty good. And when he wanted to start a business, he came to our small business services. We helped him write a business plan. We got him in touch with some angel investors, some banks that would loan him some money, a real estate agent or two who could help him find space, and then sent him 50 or so people who we had screened and trained to hire. And last I heard, this guy's doing very well. But it's the sort of thing that the city can do to help people get going. We established an entrepreneurial fund. It's a public-private partnership investing in early-stage companies. It's the first of its kind outside of Silicon Valley. And one of the companies that recently received funding was Medico.com, which used the money to launch a website that allows people across the planet to share locally relevant healthcare information. Our most ambitious innovation is to promote technological innovation and business growth. I think, however, is the one that really is amazing, and it has the potential to change the landscape, not just of our city, but of all the technology companies in the world. It is something that Seth Pinsky, Seth, I saw you down there, wave your hand. Seth Pinsky, who is the president of our Economic Development Corporation, and Deputy Mayor Bob Steele, have outlined to a tech meetup back in August. What this is an offer to world-class universities around the world to let them build or expand an applied science facility in the 5 boroughs. We will give them up to $100 million to fund land and infrastructure, and we have a process where we're going to select a winner by the end of this year. And we believe that the new facility will be a major catalyst for our economy for decades to come, generate billions of dollars in economic activity, launch hundreds of new companies, and attract the next generation of great entrepreneurs. If you think about it, who would want to move to New York? Well, one of them is the Palo Alto School. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Stanford. They have a great golf course. I played on it. I can just tell you, if I had applied to Stanford, not only wouldn't I have not gotten in, they wouldn't have sent me an application. But in the end, Stanford wants to come here. Cornell wants to come here. Purdue wants to come here. You've got a whole bunch of overseas universities who want to come here. Why? Once again, this is the most exciting place. This is where the best and the brightest want to be. And if we can get them the education that they need in technology, when they get out of school, they'll start their businesses right here. There are some signs that some of these efforts are really already paying off. We recently passed Boston, my hometown again, in the volume of venture capital investments that is heavily focused on digital startups. And the world's leading technology companies are moving into town as well. Google and Facebook have both established good-sized operations here. For Google, it's their biggest office outside of Mountain View. Last week, I joined Jack Dorsey at Twitter to cut the ribbon on their new facility here. Bloomberg has 7,000 people in New York City. That's basically half of our total worldwide employment, and an awful lot of them are technology people here. Thomson Reuters, our big competitor, is exactly the same thing. And technology is a business where business begets business. Because people are willing or want to change jobs and move from company to company, or at least have the alternatives to do so, the more companies that are here, the more attractive it is for other companies to come. We've also tried to focus on providing city services and using city services using technology. We have our first ever Chief Digital Officer. I didn't know there was such a thing before, but it turns out there are, and the woman's name is Rachel Stern. She really is very smart. Rachel, are you here? Hopefully, rather than being here, Rachel's doing something for us, but in any case, she's continuing to explore ways to use the social media to make our administration, our government, more accessible to people and serve our citizens better. Rachel came from the private sector, and she's learned what the difference is between working in the business world and working in government. And if you want to know, it's really very complex. In business, it is, as we all know, a dog-eat-dog world. In government, it's exactly the reverse. You can tell how smart a crowd is between the time I give the second line and the laugh comes. Sort of in the middle, guys. We're thrilled with the progress, all kidding aside, the city is making as being a tech capital, both inside and outside of government. But let me just tell you, we're not about to stop. We're going to do everything we can to keep building the technology business here. We keep looking for more opportunities to foster more innovation. And it's not just technologies. We have an incubator for people who want to open restaurants. It turns out that you cannot, if you want a little takeout company and make some food and build up a business, you can't do it in your home. It's just against the law. So we have a place with kitchens, all the kitchen stuff, ovens and stoves and refrigerators and this and that and the other thing, so that if you want to go into that business, you can do it. We have an incubator for the fashion industry. We have an incubator for the publishing business. All of these different things let us go and give people the opportunity to start small businesses, which eventually become big businesses and employ the people that live in the city who need jobs. Tonight, I'm excited to announce that we are establishing something called the Mayor's Council on Technology and Innovation, which we think will draw on the best minds in the industry as we develop new technology. Now, we know government's not going to have all of the answers, and that's why it's vital that we maintain a regular dialogue with the experts and the people who are building the next generation of New York's economy. And that's what this is going to try to do. This new council, which will be chaired by Deputy Mayor Steele, will include more than 10 leading entrepreneurs, CEOs, and venture capitalists. And just to give you a feel for Bob Steele, he was a 30-year veteran, vice chairman of Goldman Sachs, so he knows a little bit about starting businesses. He's lived all over the world. He was Undersecretary of the Treasury with Hank Paulson. He's been chairman of the board of Duke University, and he is chairman of the board of the Aspen Institute. So he knows something about starting businesses and funding businesses and what businesses really need to survive. And I think he and Seth Pinsky is just an awesome combination, and it's really going to make a big difference in us being able to attract people here. We're also launching the third of our New York Big Apps competition. This is where we make city data available. Big Apps 3.0, as we would obviously call it. Past winners like My City Way and Rotafly and Spontaneous, excuse me, have really benefited from the exposure that they've gotten to competition and attracting funding and new users and even recognition from the White House. And we're accepting applications for this year's competition starting tonight, and we will look to see what comes from it. But I think one of the biggest things that we can do to grow our high-tech tab is to just make sure that we focus on using what is really a unique strength of New York, and that is the immigrant population. When you go outside and you walk down the street, just take a look at the people. 2 out of every 5 people that you walk by who live here were born outside of the United States. We are the most diverse city in the world. But the real key to New York's diversity is not just the number and the places people come from. It is that we live as a mixture and other places live as a mosaic. And what I mean is you can walk down one block in Queens and you will see signs in Russian and Urdu and Spanish and Korean and English, all in one block. In one block, you can see residential and retail and commercial and industrial uses of buildings. It is very different than any place else in the world. And what it means is that people here work together. They share ideas. Our cuisines get melded together. Our language takes from all of the groups that come here. Our religions, our philosophy. Everything in New York is built the way America started, from the ground up by people who wanted to come here and bring with them a totally new set of skills. And New York City, because of the way we live, doesn't try to compartmentalize and keep those people from succeeding. Quite the contrary. We want to make sure they succeed and become the next superstars. So if you think about it, companies like Google and eBay and Yahoo all started by immigrants. If you give immigrants the chance to innovate, they will do the most amazing things. But the most impressive things is they'll do things that you and I never thought about. And so I have been down to Washington 1,000 times trying to convince Washington that this country is committing national suicide with our immigration policy. We have to open our borders and let a lot more people in. One of the things we're going to do to assist startups in making sure that they have access to the best talent is to work with the top immigration law firm, Fragaman, which is doing its time and its efforts to provide legal seminars on immigration issues. This really is a major issue for companies in the United States today. But big businesses have huge HR departments, and they can deal with it. I don't know how many people we have at Bloomberg in the HR department, but we've got 15,000 people spread over 60 countries and 120 cities. We probably do have a big staff to handle this. We did not have it when I started the company, and a lot of you probably don't have it today. So what we're going to do is have some free seminars so you can get a feel for what the climate is and how you would go about getting people into the country. And we'll have later this fall the first big meeting, and we'll make sure that all of you get an invitation. Last week's passing of Steve Jobs, I think, just reminds us all of how lucky we are to be here and how anything is possible. I got fired from my job at Salomon Brothers, thank God. Steve Jobs got fired from his company. Most people that are really successful have not had a meteoric career that keeps going up. They've had ups and downs. I don't know whether it toughens you. It'd probably be better if you didn't have to go through it. But the real world is if you're going to take risks, you're going to make some mistakes. And it's like skiing. If you never fall, you're just not trying the toughest slopes. You should get out there and make sure that you do fall every once in a while. I just want to make sure that when you get up, you realize that the future for all of you is right here in New York City. It is the best. It is the most open place. It's the most intellectually challenging place. And it is the friendliest place you will ever live, ever work. So I hope all of you are phenomenally successful and wind up paying lots of taxes here in this city. If you did, it'd be good for you and good for us. God bless.